A foreign enemy had not taken Rome in 800 years before this, and that is only one of the times it nearly ended. There is a city that once ruled the entire known world, then fell so completely that shepherds grazed their flocks among its broken marble, and then rose, in a wholly different shape, to rule a second time. This is the whole story of Rome, from a few mud huts on a riverside hill to the capital of modern Italy, almost 3,000 years carried in a single journey. And the real secret of the Eternal City is that it has never once been allowed to truly end. Working from AI trained on coins, ruins, frescoes, and the words of people who walked these streets, we rebuild the Rome that fell, layer by buried layer. A slow brown river winds between a cluster of low hills, and on the highest of them, sometime in the 8th century before the Common Era, a few families are raising huts of timber and mud and dung. There is nothing here yet. No marble, no emperors, no legend, only smoke, livestock, and a good defensive position above the water. The Romans themselves would one day fix the date of their beginning with startling precision. The 21st of April, 753, before the Common Era. The story they told about it is one you already half know. Twin brothers, Romulus and Remus, abandoned as babies and raised, so the legend runs, by a she-wolf on the riverbank. There is even a famous bronze of that wolf in Rome to this day, though here is a quiet surprise. Many scholars now suspect the wolf herself was cast not in ancient times, but more than 1,000 years later, in the Middle Ages. The brothers fell out so bitterly over where to raise their walls that only one walked away to give the city his name. Romulus built on the Palatine Hill, and that hill handed us a word we still use for the grandest houses on earth: palace. For 2.5 centuries, kings ruled the little city, some of them Etruscans from the north, who drained its boggy central valley with a great stone sewer called the Cloaca Maxima, parts of which still carry water down to the Tiber 2,500 years on. They spread the town across 7 hills. In 509 before the Common Era, the Romans drove out their last and proudest king and swore they would never kneel to one man again. What they built instead would echo for the next 2,000 years, a republic governed by an elected senate and 2 consuls who shared power and held it for only a single year at a time. They stamped 4 letters on their banners, their coins, their buildings: SPQR, the Senate and the people of Rome. Walk the city today and you will still find those same 4 letters on the iron lids of the drains beneath your feet. The slogan outlived the empire that invented it, and the republic carried a genius the ancient world had never seen. Again and again, rather than simply crushing its neighbors, Rome offered the defeated a share in itself, turning yesterday's enemies into Roman citizens and Roman soldiers. That single habit may be the truest reason it grew so impossibly large. The young republic almost ended in disaster. Around 390 before the Common Era, a war band of Gauls swept down from the north and overran the city, trapping the proud Romans on a single hill. Legend says it was the sacred geese of the temple, not the guards, who heard the enemy creeping up the slope in the dark and shrieked the alarm. Rome saved by geese. The Romans never let themselves forget it, and the Gaulish chief, weighing out the gold the Romans paid him to leave, is said to have flung his own sword onto the scales and sneered the words that became Rome's lifelong lesson in humility: woe to the conquered. Rome learned that lesson hard and never forgot it again. Over the following centuries, it fought its way across the whole Mediterranean, and its deadliest rival was the trading empire of Carthage on the coast of North Africa. In 218 before the Common Era, a Carthaginian general named Hannibal did the unthinkable. He marched an entire army, war elephants and all, over the frozen passes of the Alps to strike at Rome from the north. Picture elephants in the ice. He broke Roman army after Roman army on Italian soil. On one terrible day at Cannae, in 216, he dealt Rome the worst single defeat in its history, and still the city would not surrender. For 15 years he roamed Italy undefeated, and Rome simply refused to give in until a young commander named Scipio carried the war to Carthage's own coast and bested him there at last. In the end, it was Carthage that fell, in 146 before the Common Era, scraped clean off the map. Rome now had no equal left anywhere in its world. But the Republic was quietly rotting from the inside. Generals had grown richer and more powerful than the state itself, and none more than a brilliant, restless man named Julius Caesar. In 49 before the Common Era, ordered by the Senate to give up his army, he marched it instead toward a small northern river called the Rubicon. He stands on the bank with his soldiers behind him. To cross it means open war against his own government. He crosses. As he does, he is said to mutter 3 words we still use whenever someone passes the point of no return.
Let the die be cast now. There is no turning back.
The die is cast. He won. He made himself dictator. He reordered the calendar so thoroughly that we still live by his version of it, and the month of July carries his name to this very day. And here is where I owe you my honest opinion, because Romans have argued about this man for 2,000 years, and so will we. To me, Caesar was the most dangerous kind of great man, gifted, generous, adored by the crowd, and utterly certain that the rules had been written for lesser people. On the 15th of March, 44 before the Common Era, a circle of senators who feared exactly that turned on him, and the most powerful man in Rome fell at the foot of a rival's statue. If you think they were right to stop him before he became a king in all but name, tap that like. And if you think Rome threw away the one man who might have saved it, take it down to the comments and make your case. His end did not save the Republic, it buried it. After yet more years of fighting, and a final reckoning at sea off Actium, where he overcame Mark Antony and the Egyptian queen Cleopatra, Caesar's young heir, Octavian, was left the last man standing, and in 27 before the Common Era, he took a new name, Augustus, and became, in everything but the title, Rome's first emperor. He was shrewd enough never to call himself king. He ruled for more than 40 years, and he liked to boast that he had found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. He too claimed a month of the year for his name, August. What rose under the emperors can still stop your breath. Around 80 of the Common Era, the Romans opened the vast oval arena we call the Colosseum, where 50,000 spectators packed the stone tiers, roaring beneath canvas awnings stretched against the sun. A few years later, the Emperor Hadrian raised the Pantheon, and its single concrete dome, with a great round eye open to the sky at its very center, remains, after nearly 19 centuries, the largest dome of unreinforced concrete anywhere on the planet. Engineers today are still puzzling out how Roman concrete healed its own cracks. Their roads ran so straight and reached so far that we still say all roads lead to Rome. 1 million people lived here, packed into apartment blocks several stories high, soaking in marble bathhouses the size of small towns, and roaring at the chariot races in the Circus Maximus, where 250,000 could watch the teams thunder round. Free bread and free games kept the enormous city content. At its height, this single city governed perhaps 1 in every 4 people alive. Not every emperor was a builder. When a catastrophic fire swept through Rome in 64 of the Common Era, rumor spread that the Emperor Nero had sung for joy as the flames climbed, though the fiddle people loved to picture in his hands would not be invented for another 1500 years, which rather ruins the image. The empire swelled to its greatest size around the year 117, reaching from the rain-soaked walls of northern Britain to the hot sands of the Persian Gulf. The center of gravity, though, was quietly shifting east. A new faith had been spreading through the empire for generations: Christianity, long forbidden and often persecuted. Its followers had laid their dead to rest and held their secret rites in miles of tunnels carved beneath the city, the catacombs you can still walk through today. The turning point came in 312, when Constantine, marching on Rome to seize the throne, claimed to have seen a blazing sign of the cross in the sky and a promise of victory if he fought beneath it. He won his battle at the Milvian Bridge, and the year after, he made Christianity legal and set it on the road to becoming the faith of the whole Roman world. But Constantine also dealt Rome itself a wound. He built a glittering new capital far to the east and named it after himself, Constantinople. The emperors drifted away, and a city that had been the unquestioned heart of everything began, for the first time in its life, to feel old. The unthinkable arrived in 410. A force of Visigoths under their leader Alaric broke into Rome and stripped it for 3 days, the first time in nearly 800 years that any foreign enemy had taken the city. The shock rang around the world. People genuinely believed the end of all things had come.
This cannot be true.
A churchman named Augustus, far off in North Africa, was so shaken he wrote a whole book arguing that no earthly city, not even Rome, was built to last forever. 45 years on, another people, the Vandals, plundered Rome so thoroughly that their very name still survives in our word for mindless destruction: vandalism. The final curtain came down almost in a whisper. In 476, the last emperor of the Western Roman Empire, a mere boy, was gently set aside, and no one rose up to replace him. And here is the detail that still gives me a chill. That last emperor's name was Romulus. The city had begun with a Romulus, and the Western Empire ended with one, almost as if history had folded itself shut on purpose. What happened next is, to me, the most staggering part of this entire story. The city that had once held 1 million people, the largest on Earth, emptied out until barely 30,000 souls rattled around inside walls built for a giant. The aqueducts ran dry. The great forum where senators had once decided the fate of nations filled up with weeds and fallen stone, and for centuries afterward it was used as a common cattle pasture. The Romans even had a name for it: the Field of Cows. Sit inside that thought, the absolute center of the ancient world, reduced to the place where you took the herd to graze. I have tried so often to picture a herdsman leaning on the broken column of a temple, and I would love to know how you see it. Paint me that scene down in the comments. But Rome had one card left to play, and it was not an emperor. It was a bishop. As the old power drained away, the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, rose to become the city's true ruler and the head of Western Christianity, and pilgrims began walking thousands of miles to reach him. In the year 1300, the Pope proclaimed the first Holy Year, promising mercy to all who made the journey, and the faithful flooded in by the 100,000, a tradition the city keeps to this day, with the most recent Holy Year drawing millions only last year. On Christmas Day, in the year 800, in the old Basilica of St. Peter, Pope Leo III lowered a crown onto the head of the Frankish king Charlemagne and named him emperor, and just like that, Rome was crowning the mighty all over again. Through the long medieval centuries, the city lived rough among its own colossal bones. The Colosseum itself was quarried for its stone and fortified into a stronghold by feuding noble families. An absence then came that nearly finished the city for good. For most of the 14th century, the popes deserted Rome altogether and ruled instead from the comfort of Avignon in France. Without them, the city withered to perhaps 17,000 people, its churches crumbling, wolves said to be roaming the streets after dark. It looked once again as though Rome was finally over. What hauled it back from the edge was beauty. When the popes at last returned, they resolved to rebuild Rome as the most magnificent city in all of Christendom, and they hired the greatest artists who have ever lived to do it. In 1506, they began pulling down the 1,000-year-old Basilica of St. Peter to raise the colossal one that towers there now. A labor so vast, it took 120 years to complete. And across the ceiling of a papal chapel between 1508 and 1512, a furious, exhausted genius named Michelangelo painted the whole human story from creation onward. Forget the popular image of him lying on his back to do it. He stood on high scaffolding for 4 years, neck cricked painfully upward, plaster and paint trickling down into his eyes. Millions still file beneath that ceiling every single year. Michelangelo would go on to design the basilica's enormous dome as well, the template for great domes the world over. But the staggering cost of it all carried a bitter irony. To raise the money, the church began selling forgiveness by the receipt, and the fury that lit in a German friar named Martin Luther would split Western Christianity in two. Glory in Rome never lasts unbroken. In 1527, a mutinous army loyal to a foreign emperor poured into the city and plundered it for months, shattering the Renaissance dream almost overnight. Yet Rome did what Rome always does. It rebuilt itself grander than before. The city of soaring domes and theatrical fountains that visitors lose their hearts to today is largely the work of the Baroque age that followed, above all of one restless sculptor, Bernini, who wrapped the great piazza in front of St. Peter's in 2 sweeping arms of stone, as though the church itself were reaching out to gather in the whole world. It was in these years that the city raised the Trevi fountain, where to this day visitors fling coins over their shoulders for luck, well over €1 million a year, scooped out and given to the poor. The most profitable wishing well on earth. By now, the city had become the great prize of European travel, the climax of the Grand Tour, where the wealthy young came to stand among the ruins and feel the weight of the past. The poet John Keats spent his final months in a small room beside the Spanish Steps and lies in a quiet corner of the city still. For all its splendor, Rome was still the capital of nothing but the church. Italy itself did not yet exist as a country. It was a patchwork of kingdoms and duchies, and the popes still ruled the lands at its center, Rome among them. That changed in one dramatic century. A movement to unite Italy caught fire, carried by passionate figures like the red-shirted soldier Giuseppe Garibaldi, and one after another, the old states folded into a new kingdom of Italy in 1861. Only Rome held out, shielded by foreign troops loyal to the Pope. On the 20th of September 1870, Italian soldiers blew a breach through the ancient wall at the Porta Pia and marched in at last. The Pope sealed himself inside the Vatican in protest. The very next year, Rome became the capital of a united Italy, its destiny, after 14 long centuries, handed back to it. That standoff between the new Italy and the Pope dragged on for nearly 60 years until an agreement in 1929 carved a tiny independent country out of the heart of the city for the Church to rule. It endures today as Vatican City, at a fraction of a single square mile, the smallest sovereign nation in the world. The 20th century cast a harder shadow. A dictator named Mussolini seized power after a march on Rome in 1922, and he set about reshaping the city to glorify himself, driving a wide avenue clean through the ancient forums. His ambitions hauled Italy into a war it could not win. By 1943, the fighting had reached Rome itself. The city was occupied, and then, on the 4th of June 1944, Allied troops marched in and set it free. Mussolini's rule came to its end the following year. And in 1946, the Italian people voted to do the very thing their Roman ancestors had done 25 centuries earlier. They abolished the monarchy and declared themselves a republic. From the rubble rose a sweeter, brighter Rome. Through the 1950s and 60s, the world fell in love with the city all over again, in films shot right in its streets. And there is a reason a whole generation pictures Rome as a glamorous fountain at midnight. Hollywood decamped to the city's vast Cinecittà studios, and in 1960, Rome welcomed the Olympic Games among its ancient monuments. But something far larger was signed here too. In 1957, on a hill above those same ancient ruins, the leaders of 6 nations put their names to the Treaty of Rome, the document that founded what we now call the European Union. The city that had once bound a continent together by the sword had quietly helped to begin binding it again, this time by agreement. And so we arrive at Rome today. Close to 3 million people live in the modern capital, and tens of millions more pour in every year to walk the same worn stones as Caesar and Michelangelo. At its heart still sits that tiny country, the Vatican, where in 2025 the world mourned the passing of Pope Francis, and then watched as the cardinals chose, for the first time in history, a pope born in the United States who took the ancient name Leo XIV, an old throne and a brand new face upon it. That is Rome in the year 2026, a city that has been a village, an empire, a ruin, a field of cows, a holy capital, and the beating heart of a modern nation, refusing across 30 centuries to do the one thing every other great city eventually does: end. We are the small team behind Edward Resurrect's history, and rebuilding 30 centuries of Rome has been the privilege of a lifetime. If one moment here lodged itself in you, elephants in the snow, geese on the hill, a herdsman among the ruins, tell us which one caught you and which lost world you would like us to raise from the dust next. Subscribe and keep walking the old roads with us. Rome rose, Rome fell, and Rome rose once more. And the river that watched it all is flowing still.